All right, back in Cape Town here in Parliament, where the Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene has just delivered the medium-term budget policy statement. Let's try and get some reaction now, as we always do after the speech. Abra Barbia is on the steps of the plenary there, trying to get some reaction on that speech by the Finance Minister. Abra.
Devon, good afternoon. With me right now, I have Mr. Steve Swatt of the ACDP. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Swatt. Now, with our economy growing at 1.4%, it's much slower than what was earlier projected. It's a very difficult time. We all knew that going into the speech. Mr. Swatt, what is the biggest challenge that you feel we are facing at this time?
Well, clearly the deficit and the government debt levels are the major concern. And that is what the Minister alluded to today. How do we address that? How do we have a debt consolidation path that the credit ratings agencies will accept? We have to reduce government expenditure. We have to reduce wasteful expenditure, irregular expenditure that is estimated to be 30 billion rand per year. That is the way we can reduce that government deficit. We cannot afford tax hikes at this stage. There are going to be proposals in January. The ACDP does not support that. We believe that will negatively impact the economy, and of course our overburdened taxpayers cannot afford increased taxes. So there are ways that we can reduce government expenditure, and that is the way to go.
Mr. Swatt, thank you so much for your time. I'm now going to throw it over to my colleague Lucanyo Tlata. Lucanyo, over to you.
Abra, thanks very much. I am joined by the Shadow Minister for Finance of the Democratic Alliance, Dr. Dion George. So good afternoon. Thanks very much for joining us. Very much a speech where the Minister was tightening the belt. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't. I think that he didn't go far enough. He certainly did mention some measures, but I think they're cosmetic and vague. He never went into the size of government. He didn't go into the number of ministries. He didn't go into the size of the cabinet. And I think he could have done that. And you can cut that quite easily. It's very, very clear from what the Minister said is that we are going to see tax increases next year in February, which means that the taxpayers are now paying for the government mismanagement of our economy.
Right. What would you then have liked to hear him say, especially on the issue of reducing government spending?
Well, I think I would like to have seen him talk about maybe consolidating the economics cluster, because there are too many of those ministries, and that's why we get incoherence in policy. Also, he never mentioned, or virtually nothing, about wasteful spending. Now, we have about 30 billion rand leaking out of our public financial system every single year, and he spoke very briefly about a couple of million it was that they had actually frozen assets of people that found stealing the people's money. So he certainly didn't go anywhere into that, and that's very important, because if you look at what the Minister can do, is he can cut expenditure on those kind of things without having to go into the meat. So in other words, without having to cut on spending on transport and infrastructure and health and education and social development. That will eventually come when we run even further out of space, because he's conceded we've run out of space, we're at the end of the road, and quite frankly it's a reflection of the fact that the concept of the state at the center of our economy is failing.
All right, sir, thank you very much. That was Dr. Dion George, who is the Shadow Minister of Finance for the Democratic Alliance. Let me now cross you back to my colleague Devon in studio.